How's it going, everybody? Welcome to week 2 here. Hopefully everyone's getting back in the routine, though Monday was a holiday, so I'm gonna switch things up. But here we are, we're back. Even then, I don't know if people noticed, but I did open, even on holidays. I try to open everything up on around noonish, around 9 a.m. so that if some people wanna get working on their break, they can. But you don't have to, right? Um, uh, uh, everything's there, right? Online style. So one thing is, I did go over everyone's city compilation there. I think we have a pretty good list of people. I uploaded it in the student resources section there. If you want to look at what the final Padlet there, I think we have a lot of things: bakers, cooks, soldiers, artisans. Merchants, herbalists, doctors. So good. I think a lot of people got like the essence of how they contributed there. Definitely, we're still missing a few things that make cities complete. One, no one was a ruler, so we don't really have a ruler yet. So, I mean, these are logistics architects. Who's going to build this stuff for us? I'm not sure if anybody signed up to be a priest or priestess. Each city has, obviously religion was very important. Every city has its own ziggurat and city deity that they pray to. So, religion was part of that. We did have some astronomers, I think, which is good. A lot of people talked about, that the idea of record keeping, which we see through cuneiform and that kind of stuff. So overall, pretty good. The one thing is, if you missed a few points on there, it was mainly for specific. Some of them were kind of vague, like, like some of the cook ones was like, I made stuff. Well, what kind of stuff do they what kind of stuff they eat in Mesopotamia? This is there's or artisans, merchants. I did trading. Okay, well, what did you trade? Where did you trade it? Where did you get these products to trade? These kind of things. So going forward, try to use specifics. Like, if you kind of start with AI and say, hey, what is a profession in Mesopotamia, it's going to give you broad things. So your job is to use the course material and incorporate that stuff all together. So just kind of that's that. Feel free to read my comments. If you have any questions, let me know about that. But that's up there. So I think we have a functioning city, and that's something to kind of put in our minds. I mean, we're not going to return back to this, but just kind of be keeping in mind that when we talk about early complex societies, particularly civilizations, each civilization we have will have this divisions of labor. They'll be a little bit unique to each area, but these overarching ideas are what makes civilization sort of possible. So, so that's that. And then this week we sort of focusing a little more on Mesopotamia, getting some of those specifics of what are these different kingdoms that emerged: Babylon, Assyria, the Hittites. I gave some examples of Ashurbanipal. The British Museum has a lot of they found Nineveh, and then so we have a lot of, and the British Museum has a lot of things from Nineveh. It's also important because that's where the Epic of Gilgamesh was found. There was Ashurbanipal created this large library that then was buried, and then 2,000 years later, 3,000 years later, uncovered. So we have a lot of primary sources from this period to kind of know about. And then talked about trade networks. So this is an important thing. This is lapis lazuli. This is a very important blue gem of Mesopotamia, of the ancient world in general. And what's unique about that is only found up in what is now Afghanistan, up in the mountains there, the way it was made geologically, I think. The way that stone was made, it's found only in a few places. I think Afghanistan, and I think down in South America as well. But anywhere you see this in the ancient world of Eurasia, it had to come along trade networks out of Afghanistan. So that kind of tells us how these things moved. Other things, Mesopotamia had a lot of food, but it didn't have a lot of raw materials. So again, when you're thinking about, when you wrote about your things of merchants or artisans, things you make, Mesopotamia had to import a lot of that stuff from surrounding areas. They got their wood from Lebanon. They got their, minerals from up in the mountains, the Caucasus, and all the way to what is now the Himalayas. Tin, bronze is copper and zinc. Copper and tin, I think, makes bronze. Put it together there. So All of those things were brought in. So be thinking about that. I mean, Mesopotamia also shows us how these early trade networks connected. Some of the legacies that are still around from Mesopotamia. They had a base 60 system, so 360 degrees in a circle. That's all Mesopotamian stuff. 60 seconds in a minute. That's all Mesopotamian stuff. 24 hours in a day. All of these are base 6, base 60 computations. Some other things, I gave a link to the ancient board game that they had. They had beer, wheel, a lot of things came out of Mesopotamia. And then we also talked about some other Near East groups, the Phoenicians, which are another traders. They created a new system of recording, which is the alphabet. So I sort of showed how our alphabet can be traced back to the Phoenicians. And then the Hebrews were a group of people who came up with a new religion, Abrahamic religions that would become Judaism, and then later Christianity and Islam. So kind of the Abrahamic religions come out of that. The one group worshipped a single God instead of many gods, this God of Yahweh. And then sort of moved to the Levant, which is now sort of Israel, and started their own world there. So these societies that are existing within the larger Mesopotamian world. And then, what do we know about Mesopotamia? Well, we have two really good, strong, we have a lot of primary sources, but two that sort of stand out, sort of shape what we know about this region is one, the Law Codes of Hammurabi. There are, I think, 182, 282? It's on Lamaku. I can't remember off the top of my head, but a lot of but these are kind of what are these? These are law codes, so showing the structure of society of a Mesopotamian society. But it also, if you read into these, and hopefully you do, kind of look at these a little bit, they really reflect. They give us insights into the worlds of Mesopotamia, different class structures, different, the importance of different divisions, right? Towards the end of that reading, they have like, hey, you better do this, or, right, if you build a house and it collapses, that's on you, man. It's your fault. You'll be fined or killed, right? And, if you're upper class, you get fine money. If you're lower class or a slave, you just get killed. But sort of shows a little bit about insights into things like farming, agriculture, irrigation, right? There's the ones, if you're at fault for irrigation, you're going to get fined. But if it's natural disaster, the gods do it, well, then we'll just erase that debt. So a lot of really good insights we can pull from these law codes. And ultimately also the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest texts that we have. Again, kind of talked about the history of that text itself, that it was found in this Nineveh. People were reading it as like cuneiform. There's a guy named Irving Finkel who has a lot of good videos about how to like read cuneiform if you're interested in that. But also they were able to decipher this, and then as they were reading it, found this thing of the flood. They're like, oh my God, this is the Bible. But then they realized that the flood story was very much part of many stories in Mesopotamia. So it shows sort of the spreading of culture and how they borrowed from each other. But then this Gilgamesh, right, that he was this king that is historically a king, but this stories, how epics get built off these figures. And as the epic states, he was a really bad king, so they made this buddy, Enkidu, to go defeat him, but then they become best buds and go do all sorts of things. But then, as chapter 3 tells us, right, he's killed, now Enkidu is killed, right, because Ishtar wants to marry Gilgamesh, but Gilgamesh doesn't want to, so they kind of go against the Ishtar and the gods, and then but it's interesting sort of the interplay. I mean, what that shows us is this interplay between gods and humans in this world, right? A lot of interesting things about like famines and retribution, and then ultimately like we see Enkidu goes to this afterlife, and then the famous sort of lament of Gilgamesh, one of the early sort of love poems of that. And I actually gave in there, I gave a recording of the opening lines of Gilgamesh by Peter Pringle, who that's kind of what that person does. If you want to go on his YouTube site, he does that for all sorts of early songs. So we can hear a little bit about what Mesopotamia is. So I think that's it. This week is a discussion post. Again, sort of emphasize of that when you look at those. Make sure you're including references from the course materials, right? I want to make sure that you're engaging with that stuff. So in any of your posts, make sure you show me where you're getting this information from. So great. I think that's it. Have a good rest of your week.